Hello and welcome back to the Tickling the Void podcast with me, Shawnee Boy. A meta podcast where I try to dig myself out of my existential hole of dread and misery by making a podcast exploring this dystopian nightmare that we're trapped in. Now, for anybody who was listening to the Christmas episode, I was a little bit, optimistic, which proved misplaced because January has been an absolute fucker already. And, I should have known, right? I should have known. It was, I don't know what happened. Maybe I was feeling a bit, get the festive spirit in me accidentally or something. But I should have known because 2025 has been off to a fucking shitter of a start for quite a lot of people. But we're back in the studio and we've actually got a guest today to talk about, social media, the world, everything in it, and just probably just have a moan. Just have a moan at how fucking absolute terrible and shite everything is, and trying to exist is a pain in the arse. Go on the Patreon if you're not on the Patreon already. This does cost money to make, even if we can just cover the costs. Keep the lights on, that'd be brilliant. Patreon.com/tickling the void. We're open for sponsors. Puka pads, we'll get back to you at the end. But so I just want to introduce you to Jordan Robertson, aka Hawaii Fivo. Podcaster, musician. What else do you want to add in there? Actor,
documentary maker, filmmaker, production guy. I just say artist. That covers. That's like a link tree for your own
general
self-identification. Know what I mean?
General artist.
A general artist.
How we doing?
I say a scheme artist.
How we doing? How's your 2025 been so far?
It's actually been pretty good. The start it was kind of slow with the business stuff. So I've got my own production company. So I work with a few businesses, and they work in the construction sector. So with that, it's pretty slow coming out of January. But things have started picking up. I've had some new clients maybe coming on board and that. So past week or so, it's been a bit of a mixed bag. So I've been dealing with some personal stuff, but also professionally things have been going well. So I'm in the in between. Also, I'm a wee bit no well today, so dealing with that. But things are good. I'm quite happy.
You're far too optimistic. I don't like it.
I hope it's infectious. I want to be infectious. Apart from
don't talk about infectious.
I'll not infect you with this. Optimism, let that be infectious. The flu.
Socially distanced optimism. So how are you finding? Because you started making content, and then you've made the jump into making content for other people. Mm-hmm. How did you find that?
So that happened by accident, really. I applied for funding. It was Sonny Govan hip hop bursary. It was. I was making rap music and that at the time, and my plan was to buy a camera where I could start making my music videos. So I got awarded funding for that, and I went and bought a camera. And I swear to God, the camera gathered dust. I put it in my room, and I just barely used it because the plan was to use it for my podcast as well, and this was my first exploration into using cameras, because I thought it was just like using a camera on an iPhone. You just hit record and go, whereas with cameras it's a whole different kettle of fish. I bought 2 cameras at first, thinking I'll use 2 cameras for the podcast. I've got 2 cameras, I can do this and that, but they'd 30-minute recording limits on them, so I realised they weren't fit for purpose, so I sent them back and bought one good camera. Then a pal of mine, he runs like it's like a tyre replacement workshop type thing. He's like going to come in and do an advert for me. And I had done wee sketch promos where I do like a comedy skit, but it's centred around a business. I can't remember the first person I'd done that for, but that kind of came about and they were quite popular with some people. So this was like kind of a step up. So I was like, right, I'll give it a try. I went and done it and he liked it. And I posted it on my social medias, and then I had more and more people approaching me. So I was working in a student accommodation just around the corner. It was night shift. It was 12-hour shifts, and I think out of that 12 hours, I done 2 hours of work for the student accommodation. The rest, I had downtime myself, which was brilliant for me, for my content creation. So I just used that opportunity to get better at editing, my production skills, and I eventually get fed up working there, I get fed up a night shift, and I've been too much of a free bird, man. See, me having a boss, a supervisor, and my boss was lovely, she's a great woman, but I just hated being confined like that. And it does, like anybody that works night shift, it gets in the way of your life. And I was working 4 on 4 off, so it was just dead erratic shifts. It did serve a purpose, but I got to the point I was fed up with the place. I thought to myself, I was sitting trying to think of my business ideas. How can I leave this? I was devising ideas for protein coffee shakes and all this stuff. I was trying to think, you get the mad millionaire inspired delusions at night. You're like, all right, I'm going to do this, and then you're like, right, how am I going to do this? Because I've got no money. And then it dawned on me, I was like, I've already been doing the adverts. Why don't I just go full time with this Some Boy Productions? So I done that, and I just phoned my boss one day and says, sorry to say, I'm going to leave. And she had to convince me to do my notice period, because I've got a month notice period. But I was like, all right, I'm gone, see you later. And she's like, right, do you know what to do your last month? I was like, second thought maybe that's a good idea. So it gave me an opportunity to kind of plan, but the way I seen it, it was a risk. And I'm a big believer in the YouTube videos you watch, like, you gotta take risks and all that kind of stuff. I was watching one earlier. Just to get out of my bed and I'm talking about. So I believed in that, and I believed, right, if I leave my job, that suddenly puts me into survival mode because I've got my own house, I've got my own motor. So if I'm in a job, I'm comfortable, I've got a guaranteed wage every month, my needs are met. But if I take that away, then suddenly I need to get creative. And that's exactly what I done. And I left, and I was luckily enough, I pretty much left, and quite quickly I started working with one of my long-term clients I'm still working with today, Premier Garden Services, and it just carried on for that. And I gauged it. I was like, right, I'm going to look at how does the first month go. I'll gauge how the first month goes, and then for then I'll kind of, probably the worst kind of business strategy ever, right? I'll see how the first month goes, and if it's up in the air, I'll just get a job. That was my kind of thing, right? And the first month was great. Made in 1 month the most I'd ever made in my life, and that was a kind of indicator that, right, I can do this. So for then on, don't get me wrong, there's been periods where it's been up, it's been down, but I suppose that's life. But I do enjoy it, and do enjoy having the free time as well. And the way I seen it too, see creating content for businesses, that was also an opportunity for me to get better at my craft whilst getting paid for it. So I saw that as, well, I'm just essentially getting people to pay me to train myself. Aye. And that's what I do. And shout out YouTube, my biggest teacher, my mentor these days, man. Can't beat it.
So I take it then, you being your own boss is something you're comfortable with? Because as you know, I do it myself. I struggle with it, man. I really, really struggle.
In what way?
Motivation,
right?
I can procrastinate like nobody's business.
Aye.
And you know, putting yourself out there. If you had somebody behind you, like in my position, if I had somebody behind me going, "You need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do that," I'd be like, "Right, all right, fair enough, I need to do it." But then there's that bit at the back of my mind's going, "You don't really need to do it, do you? You can put that off, can't you?"
I feel you. Like, accountability is a massive thing. See, for me though, the fact I've got people paying me money to make them this content, because when somebody gives you money for something, gives me money for something, I feel I need to deliver. Like they've got an expectation here, and this also reflects my brand. So there is an added almost pressure there, but it's like no kind of pressure where it's overwhelming. It's a pressure that's, right, I need to act. And the thing is, where I have got flexibility, so I could say, right, I'll do their videos tomorrow, I'll work on my own thing. The biggest thing I was finding was having time to work on my own stuff. So I try to be strategic, and that's the thing, it's you fix it whilst you're moving, in my opinion, because it's that way you can go in with a plan, but as you say, life gets in the way. And see, it's the biggest pressure I find, or the biggest probably obstacle I find, like, because you work for yourself, you're essentially flexible. So everybody else thinks you can adapt to their time schedules. Yep. When it doesn't work like that, because I could be sitting editing at like 11, maybe 1 in the morning. Times I've been editing right to 3 in the morning, then back up at 7. And that's the side people don't see. I love it, because then that way I see there's a lot of people that aren't doing this, and I'm grateful for it. But it's hard to understand unless you're doing it. You're doing it, so you know that as well. So that can be quite frustrating. But I find the fact if people are paying me to do something, then there is an added element of pressure there to deliver.
It's everything else that usually gets to me. You know, as you say, if you do get the pressure of delivering for people, and I think, you know, that's a good motivation. But it's everything else that I struggle with. So that getting to that point, getting to that bit, I'm just like, I'll just slink back a bit, and you know.
Aye, it can. Don't get me wrong. See, if you take your foot off the gas, it can happen. But for me, I feel I'm quite an active individual. I feel I'm quite disciplined. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't say I'm the most highly functioning person. I do have my off days. My days maybe I don't do as much as I should. Maybe, but I think the biggest thing is awareness and identifying, like, right, for talk's sake, if you're editing, you need to be focused in editing. It's like if I'm on a building site and I've been given a task, I can muck about and still get that task done. You need to be editing, you need to be focused on what you're doing. Whereas if I pull out my phone and I go end up in TikTok for half an hour, then I'm like, oh, and I put it back down, and somebody pings me and I'm picking the phone up. So what I've realised, right, my phone's a distraction. So what I need to treat this like is a job, because at first you're like, I work for myself, I can pick what hours I work. But if you approach it with that mindset, suddenly you leave yourself with this added pressure. And see, with stuff, when I procrastinate, I always end up getting that way, that dread, like, right, I need to get this done. So what I found is, right, I need to start treating this like a job. So when I go in my studio, say I start editing at 9, my phone's gone, like, I've downloaded like app blockers, my phone's gone and do not disturb, and I'm not answering any day till like maybe about 12 and I have something to eat. That'll be like my lunch break. I just treated it like a job, and doing that, I was able to reap the results for it. But as I say, it's a learning process. You're not taught how to operate your own business. Biggest thing, right, and I'll say it out loud, I need to get an accountant, man. See, to do my taxes. That's I've had that procrastination since the start. And now
Did you wait until 31st of January, or did you?
No, I'm still trying to get one. Nah, well, a guy phoned us last night, but it's like in that way as well. I don't want to say too much, but a lot of stuff I just went like that, right, I'll just worry about that later and I'll deal with it here and now.
Brutal, man. It is brutal. So, how have you found, because you were a content creator before you did making stuff for other people. How do you find existing in that ecosystem? Because that's something that I really struggle with, and I think you sort of excel at. Mm-hmm. Is I let it get to me so much. Mm-hmm. Like it really fucks with me. Putting stuff out there and having to be on these things, and knowing that it's a sort of trap.
Right.
Because, people say, I just get off it. Well, no, you need to be on it. Mm-hmm. And I can regiment myself with it. Uh-huh. I don't have Twitter or anything on my phone. I've got that on the computer, so you're creating that separation. But even then, I feel it fucking getting to me.
Right, okay.
But I think you seem to just don't let it affect you at all, and it's something that I really admire about you. So,
what seem you say it really gets to you? In what way does it get to you? Like, is it like public perception? Is it the comments? What is it that gets to you?
It's a lot of stuff. It's the things themselves. I feel fucking ill after I've been on them for any length of time. I don't know what it is. I've said it's like a tick in the back of my head. Mm-hmm. I can feel it. It's doing something to me, and we know that's the algorithms and all this other shit. But also, just being exposed to so many other people's fucking stupid opinions all the time, 24/7. I feel, what did I say? I felt like my consciousness was getting shredded, and I find it then difficult to put stuff out there in that environment.
Aye.
And that's sort of where my difficulty comes in.
Right, okay. So see, for me, the way I see it, it's like, of course, in that respect, that is a necessary evil, because if you've got a certain goal or ambitions in mind, then definitely it's a footpath to achieving that. I say to everybody, anyway, like even businesses and that, if you're not using social media, you're not utilising it, essentially. It is a tool, but at the same time, it's kind of like Pandora's box. If you open it up too much, man, it can swallow you up. X especially, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I go in that and scroll for, I think I make it to the minute mark. I need to get off this. It's pure negativity, and I don't know if it's my algorithm or if that's, especially now you go on it and the stuff that's posted on it is just wild. But with me, I'm finding, see, when I'm talking about that app locker, I'm getting to a point where I'm just locking it during the day and maybe having a wee swatch at night. But sometimes I go and scroll and it's that way I'm sitting and I'm going, what am I getting out of this?
Yep.
And don't get me wrong, I love making content and posting it. And many people say we don't care about how we care about views and that kind of thing. I like it when my stuff gets viewed a lot and I get a lot of interaction. I do like it when it's positive or negative. But at the same time as well, I try not to get hung up on it, because at the start, it was all about, right, what can get the most views? What can go viral? What can essentially give me return on my time investment? So what can I put out there that can get me my followers, my views quickly? So I don't know if that's a case of, I think that's just human beings as a whole. You want to put in the least amount of work and then get the maximum rewards. I did anyway. And then I started to learn with the creative process, right, what is it actually like about it? Is it public perception? Because I can't control that. Because yourself, you sit for hours, days, maybe weeks devising an idea, recording it, putting it together like, this is great. And then you think, this is the best thing I've ever made. And you're just seeing it. Like, everybody's loving it. It goes viral. Suddenly, that's you. It's just changed your circumstances forever. You post it, it gets like 10 likes in 2 hours. And you're like, what's going on here? And then it's just, suddenly, your perception of the quality of that video, whatever it is, changes. Because suddenly this great video that was going to totally revolutionise your life is just, all right, it's crap now. And suddenly I had to realise that. I'm like, right. And listening to a lot of Rick Rubin, I really connected with what he says, because he says it's all about the creative process. I'm paraphrasing, by the way, this isn't how he says it. It's like when you release it, it ceases to be what you made. It suddenly becomes something else, and it's out with your control. So what do you have control over? The creative process. And I've realised that, like, I've stopped getting hung up on how well a video as such does. As I say, but don't get me wrong, it's good when I post it and it does get well received. But at the same time as well, it's not the be all and end all. And I feel in that way, it's allowed me to create more organic content. And then suddenly I'm like, right, in terms of a podcast, before I was always focused on, right, who can I get on that will get the most views? And there'd be a lot of people I wasn't interested in the conversation, but I was hoping that it would work. And see, try to force a conversation like that, like an hour and a half, it's quite draining because you're not really interested in the chat. So since I started looking at, right, more organic conversations, organic content, right, what do I want to make, who do I want to speak to? But regardless of an audience, the audience is secondary. I've started to enjoy the process a lot more. I love it. I love social media because see, before I had social media, it has got a lot of downfalls. And it's that way, it's no letting it dictate your life. It doesn't define who I am. Because a lot of people will see me in social media, then they'll meet me in person, they'll be like, they'll be trying to do the maths in their head and I can see them, man, like you got a calculator, mate. But with that, before I never really had purpose in life. And as I say, in and out of jobs and that way, like, right, I ended up, I think I was scaffolding at one point. And I was like, maybe I could be a scaffolder. And I was like, it was more doing something so people would get off my back because I had no purpose, no direction. There was a few things that I liked, but I didn't really see an opportunity for a career. Lockdown happened. I just started posting just for the boredom because I was furloughed. And from then on, I just buzzed off it. And it was just sitting, getting ideas and putting them out on a public platform. Sometimes it would do well, sometimes it would fall flat. But I remember going back after the furlough, right, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to make content. And I remember thinking at the time, especially being in Scotland, it's alright if you're in a place like America and all that, and you want to be like a content creator or work in the creative industry because there's a lot of career opportunities there. In Scotland, you're kind of like, you're out in the wilderness and you're like, right, how do I do this? Because you meet a lot of people that are in the creative industry and it's like, oh, I do this, but my actual full-time job is something totally different, which is fine. But for me, I was like, no, I want to make this my full-time job because I was hopeless at everything else. I was a terrible scaffolder. I was terrible at everything else I'd done. And I'm grateful for that now because I used to feel pure useless and think that I can't do nothing right. And a lot of people watch my content or know before them. That's great because if I was making content that appealed to everybody, I wouldn't be making content that appealed to me. Exactly. So I remember going back and it was like, right, how do I figure out a career opportunity out of this? And doing it, and you'll make some money here and there for views and obviously your Patreons and that kind of thing, but I always found that pretty difficult. And then now when I'm doing what I'm doing, I've managed to transition it into a career. I'm like, right, I have to remind myself at times I'm out working with a business like Premier as such, and we'll be like, right, let's think of a sketch idea, and you'll think you're like this mad skit and they're all right, you do this and you do that, and I'm like, this is my job, this is mental. But it's crazy how it eventually works at sell it, man.
So before you started this, so you said lockdown,
Aye.
did you ever do anything sort of creative before that?
Aye. I played the guitar. I started playing the guitar in Pullman. I got a guitar in 2012 in Pullman. I was doing a 4.5-year sentence and I got a audit, and I'd heard Oasis, not for the first time, but the first time I actually listened to them outside of Wonderwall. It was the worst story ever. It was like 2010. I was watching The X Factor and see Liam Payne, him was One Direction that died. He came on to do his audition and he sang Stop Crying Your Heart Out. And I was like, that's an absolute tune. How have I never heard this before? So I banged through to the guy next door to me. He'd Time Flies, see the Oasis compilation. I knew he liked Oasis. I was like, what's this tune? I sang it to him in the window. And he's like, Stop Crying Your Heart Out. I was like, have you got it? He's like, aye. And I was like, what is it in? So he's given us this CD in. Bear in mind, this is the Oasis compilation, so it's like the best of. And I was like, banger after banger after banger. I was like, oh my God, it just changed. I used to listen to like New Monkey and PCDJ and all that before it. And it was suddenly, it opened my mind up to this type of music. So there was a few instances where the opportunity to play the guitar was there, but I picked it up, tried it and put it back down. Then remember one day I says to a boy for Dundee, and I don't know if it's still like that these days, but back, like obviously after the back of the View, everybody in Dundee played the guitar. So this guy played the guitar and I says, mate, show us how to play that. And he's like, mate, I've known you for years, why are you asking me now? It was just that way. He thought he was going to waste his time, and I was like, right, just show us. So he gave me the chords to Live Forever. He's like, right, just go away and you can work on that. And I just sat, but in the jail at that time, you've got nothing to do. It was an escape. It was an escape for this man, and allowed time just flew by. So I was leaving Pullman. I was like, all right, I'm not going to buy a guitar when I'm out, so I'm taking this one with me. So I just stole the guitar, took it out with us, kept it, and the friend group I hung about with, they never really done anything like that, so it just kind of gathered dust. Then I started hanging about with a group of boys, and they were in a band, so that kind of introduced me to it again. And they encouraged me, like, start writing your own tunes, like, you can only get better at it. I started writing tunes, and I remember trying to write tunes like the ones I'd heard about love songs and all that, and I'm like, I don't really have much experience in that. Like, what can I write about? And I was like, just write about getting mad with it, because that's all I'd done at the time. So I wrote it, and I was like, wow, man, and I just started doing that. And then I eventually went back to, I ended up going to Berlin. I got an 11-month recall for something. And I get my guitar in there and I just used that time just to write tunes. And if you go on my social media, you see that the songs I make get absolutely slated far and wide, which is great. At least people are watching it. But it was a great escape for me because you're in a place where people are full of drugs and it's just so... There's desperation. It's everywhere. It's rife. I was able to escape with that and just channel my environment into something positive. And I was realising it was a coping mechanism, essentially, but I didn't realise it at the time. I got out off the back of that sentence, planning to hit the road and be this singer-songwriter and all that, and I ended up just a mad raving gearhead and just on the Charlie every day. So the guitar get put in the back burner. And I remember a couple of times I dabbled in comedy, because I've always been like having a laugh and that kind of thing. I done a couple of open mics, like your 5-minute slots and all that kind of thing, but I remember the first open mic I done, my God, man, it was awful. So I had been smoking a lot of weed at the time, right? So I had this open mic coming up. It was Tarry and Boyd, shout out Tarry. He'd asked me to do this something. Like, do you fancy getting a wee bash? I was like, I know. So I was smoking a lot of weed at the time, so I was like, I'll write 5 minutes. And when I was stoned, that's the only time I wrote. So I'm writing these mad jokes, thinking this is absolutely hilarious. I'm pissing my pants laughing. And then when I went up to do the 5 minutes, I was stone cold sober. And like, for the first joke, I realised like, I only found these jokes funny because I was stoned. They're absolutely atrocious. So I just raced through the set, trying to get it done as quick as possible. Oh, it was awful, man. I feel stunk to place it. Then I done it again. Done it a couple of times, and I just went, you know what? I can be spontaneously funny. I like doing the skits and that, but see, rehearsing like a routine and going up, it just never clicked for me. But I'm one of the people I believe that life is a catalogue of experience. I like trying things. See if I go, would I like that? Let's go and try it. If I don't like it, at least I've tried it. That's my kind of approach to things. So I done that, and I remember when I got back to the scaffolding thing, I've always had something to focus on. So like with the music, the comedy type thing, and I was like, what? Am I going to be a singer? Am I going to be a comedian? Because I always thought I had to be one thing. Aye. I didn't realise you could do more than one thing. Then when the lockdown came into place, it was just by pure accident. And it was actually, I done a parody. That was my first kind of content creation. I done it was like parodies of like famous tunes, and I'd be making up mad Scottish like stories and just like written the pish. So I managed to combine the two by pure accident. And plus as well, as I say, it was a mad raving geary. The first tune was called I'm on a Bender. It's like a parody of Jerry Cinnamon. She's a belter. And it didn't go pure viral, but for anything that I'd ever done, it's pretty viral. It was like a couple 100,000 views. And the lyrics were about my life at that point in time. Well, up until then, it was just pure chaotic and just so bad with drinking drugs and that. And people connected with it. So it was like a kind of blend, just by chance. And then as time went on, I started doing a podcast. And I've always had previous history of starting something, getting to a certain point with it, and then just giving up. Aye. And I remember thinking back, like, at times like that, if I'd have just stuck that, I'd have been maybe so much further with it. So I've always had that motivation. So when I started the podcast, it was 4 years that were doing it. Within the first podcast get released, 2 people pulled out, and the third one was saying, I'm not letting go on camera. So it ended up, I'm like, I could either just patch this or I could keep it going. So I've got this memory of right giving up and things. So I'm like, right, I've given up on everything I've done to this point now, so I'm going to continue with this no matter how hard it gets. And it's been one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life. I date now, and I've done it myself for a long time. So things have just kind of like came along the way. I started doing like comedy type sketches just because I walk about and I get mad scenarios pop into my head, and I'll just start busting out laughing in front of like, people, and they'll be like, what are you laughing at? And I'm like, you don't get it, because it's pure and I explain it to them like, you're not right in the head. And I'm not, which is great. I love it. I'd hate to be right in the head. How boring would that mean? But I started just writing down these mad scenarios that popped into my head, and then that's what became my skits. So people are watching my skits like, your head's fried, like you're literally seeing what goes on in my head. So as time went on, things have popped up, opportunities, like I got an opportunity to act. And I'd loved acting. I'd done drama in school, but I was dead self-conscious at the time because I was like a scheme boy and all that, and you were in school, you're self-conscious at the best of times, so I couldn't really apply myself to it. But I always had that want to do it, so I've managed to find myself into that, and just things have popped up along the way. Now I do that many things. Sometimes I'm like, am I doing too much? But we'll probably go into it shortly. I remember I done ayahuasca, that I kind of got like a bit of revelation there. Like I realised I'll go into it as we progress, but I'm trying to think how to say it. It's like a message you get. And before I'd always pondered, right, am I doing too much? Should I gear up this, that and the next thing? And so I can focus on one thing. And I've realised I'm just one of the people that can do a multitude of things. That's essentially what it is. So I've just accepted that about me. So it does get stressful at times, man, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
So just to jump back, actually, because that was just in the news recently, just so I can make a point, because we've both been quite critical of Creative Scotland, rightly so, about a lot of the stuff they were doing. But there was something that came out, I think it was last month, where the Daily Express and a couple of Tories were trying to make a big deal out of Creative Scotland funded, what was it? I think it was rap workshops in prisons in Scotland.
Aye.
And they were trying to make this big, massive deal about how atrocious this is, how atrocious that is. And it's like, that's one of the few things that Creative Scotland's funded that you could actually say, no, that's beneficial. And you like, as somebody who's been there, you could probably attest to that.
Oh, definitely. Because see, if you look at the likes of what I found, like, if people talk about rehabilitation in the prison system, like how I found myself rehabilitated and put into a state of mind where the consequences of going back to jail far outweigh anything. Well, it's just, how am I trying to say this? So, the position I found myself in right now, right? See, to go back to jail, and I've done it. I remember I went back to jail in 2021 for something that happened in 2018. I was on the run for like a year, then lockdown came in, so it got pushed back. But 2021, I was already doing acting, I was podcasting, all this stuff. So I had a lot of stuff. I'd finally had purpose and direction in life. So I get sent back to jail. I get 14 months, only done 4, but it was the shortest sentence I've ever done, but the hardest, because I was like, I've got all this opportunity outside, and now I'm back here. So that was beneficial in the sense where I had a taste of what I'm missing from outside. Before it was a cakewalk, not a cakewalk as such, but I didn't really care because I'm like, it is what it is. But see, having that purpose and direction, it gave me, I'd like to say motivation, but I don't even think motivation, the word motivation does it justice. It gave me so much incentive to stay away from the jail. So the thing is, see what a lot of people, there's a lot of talented people in the prison system, but when you're going into the prison system, the only kind of like stability they can offer it is like work sheds, is like you've got like bricklayers, you've got roofers, you've got cleaners and all that kind of thing. And see if you're a guy that's like a 30-year heroin addict that spends most of your time in like hostels or crack dens and stuff like that, which is quite a lot of the people that go into like Ballini, that provides a sense of stability, which is great. But a lot of people are going into that, and then like to me, I felt like a triangle trying to fit into a square shape. That makes sense. It was like I was trying to get fit in something and I just wasn't fitting. Being able to explore something like that, there's some guys that might do the workshops and go, this isn't for me, but some people might do it and go, you know what, I've got something here. And if I want to talk about managing the prison system, a lot of people cope in the jail by using drugs. See, for me, I never really used drugs in the jail. And it's an absolute contrast to the life I lived outside of jail. When I went to jail, it was like a kind of detox. But I think a massive contributor to that was the fact that I always had something to focus on. I didn't just sit. Like my first sentence, I get right into the gym, and then near the end I started playing the guitar. But my recall, I used that to write songs and write tunes and just like channel my energy like that. My last one, I worked in the radio station in the jail, and what I would do is I would sit and write like mad ideas for like the radio and that. But what I would do is at night, I would keep a notepad under my pillow, and I would see during the night you get these spontaneous wee like ideas that pop into your head. So I kept it under my pillow because I didn't want my co-pilot knowing what I was doing, because I was quite embarrassed. Just that way, it's like, what you doing? Oh, well, I've had an idea. I didn't really know how to talk about it to people, so I just kept it myself. So I'd get up and write wee ideas in the middle of the night, and a lot of the ideas I took out with me and then ended up on social media. But the thing is, for me, I realised I had like a knack for that. I was lucky enough, I was able to go into like back into Ballini, and I knew I was going back out to do the social media type thing. Whereas these guys might go into like your workshops as such and go, you know what, wait a minute, there's something here. And it might not be so much they go out and become big time rappers, but they might go out and get into something else and realise, wait a minute, I've got a creative spark in me. And it's a great manager for mental health, creativity. But the thing is as well, see the likes of your Tories and that, because a lot of these things, it's no a vote winner to be encouraging these types of things, because the Tories are just dead hard, harder sentences, harsher punishment. And if you look back, was it 100 odd year ago, people used to get hung I mean, and people back in olden times, people used to get executed in front of crowds for quite menial crimes. Didn't stop people from reoffending. You know what I'm talking about? So we've done the harshest of punishments and that never worked. So I think what's needed is a bit of a fresh approach. See the fact that Creative Scotland's funding something like this, I find it kind of almost surprising, because that sounds a bit like, wow, you're actually doing something good with this money, and I sound quite scathing. See, when I done that piece on Creative Scotland, I never went in with the mindset that they are corrupt. I'd heard a lot, and I was like, you know what, I want to investigate this. And I suppose I kind of came to the conclusion there is a wee bit in there, not on top of it. But the thing is, as well, see, seeing something like that, I would like to see how much they've awarded to it, because if you look at the likes of the Hip Hop Bursary, that's funded by Creative Scotland. I think it's a national lottery, Creative Scotland. I don't know how much Creative Scotland actually contribute. But putting the money into these things is going to go a lot further than giving some middle class artist 20 grand to do an album that will, know what I mean, it will probably get 1,000 listens and then gather dust for the rest of eternity.
I mean, for the few things they do that's good, there is an overwhelming amount of stuff that they do which you're just looking at it going, there's not a hope in hell that if somebody for the schemes came up with an idea similar to that, they would get the money for that. Like the porno thing they did.
That's insanity, man.
You're not going to get some guy going, going to have Chantel getting double teamed behind the bike sheds. He's $100,000 for that, and that's essentially what that was. It's ridiculous. It's total nonsense. And Scotland's really bad for this, I think, because there's multiple layers to the society. And we do the shortbread stuff, the Visit Scotland stuff, all the haggis and the shortbread and all that shit. And there's a lot of middle class people and upper middle class people who make a lot of money for doing essentially fuck all. And a lot of these, it's not just Creative Scotland, there's a whole bunch of third sector organisations which are connected. And we just don't give a shit about the actual, or it feels like we don't give a shit about the people that actually live here. And it's for me, it's a brutal environment to exist in. I don't know how you sort of feel about that.
So for me, so I stay in Govan, so very working class area. And I know a lot of working class artists. There is a lot of talent that's kind of overlooked, and I find, see, when people are looking at Scottish culture from a creative standpoint, they're looking at, so if it go back to the likes of your Still Game and all that kind of thing, and I always use the example, see the Neds in Still Game, it's like a guy kicking about with a Burberry scarf and talking this pure West End uni accent. You're like, that's not a reflection of reality here. And I've taken part in a good few independent productions and see the work that goes into it, and for the funding, the money they get, it's like the work is up here and the money's here. And it's a tricky thing as well, because part of me is kind of, right, I'd love to see more working class type productions, but what is the issue here? Because if we look at the middle class type thing, right, what defines somebody's middle class? Is it their wage bracket or their parents' wage bracket? Is it where they come from? Because the likes of me, if I'm going the right way I'm going in the next 10 years, I'd be happy to be making a certain amount. So would that put me into a middle class wage bracket? Say I want to move out of Govan to a more affluent area, would that become middle class? But I would never categorise myself as that, because I always want to kind of grow the community. So it's quite a tricky subject in my opinion. But the thing is, there's a lot of Scottish culture that is getting buried. I remember being at a film premiere long ago. It was a documentary about the difficulties, I think it was classism in the film industry. A guy done a documentary about it, and Peter Mullen was there, and he said he was at a meeting with BBC Scotland executives, and they were talking about pitching ideas for certain programmes to get made, and they told him, it says, we don't want any period dramas. And he was kind of like, right, so why you want, look how rich Scottish history is. Why you want to bury it? And if you look at England, how many period dramas can you see for doing it? Can you name a couple Bridgerton and all that kind of thing? I don't watch none of them, know what I mean? But
they've got too many.
Exactly. And it seems to be that way. If you look at the likes of London, right, the creative industry doing it is popping, probably the biggest in the UK. Ireland is starting to kind of grow. You've got your Love Hates, your Kins, all these types of things. But Scotland just still seem to be in first gear. It's kind of, and when I don't accept that these stories aren't worth telling, I think the people that control the funding and control the money just don't resonate with it, and they think, no, your likes of your BBC, right? they're trying to create stuff that appeals to a large audience. But I think if I was to make like something, and I'm not just saying me, but anybody, see if you make something about like the kind of working class schemes and all that kind of stuff and the stuff that goes on there, the reality, I think that would appeal to a larger audience, because some people that have got no experience at it. Look at true crime. True crime's one of the biggest subjects that people tune into, whether it's podcasts, documentaries, whatever. The majority of people that love true crime have never broke the law in their life. It's almost kind of like that.
It's a voyeuristic
I've
thing.
never rode a line, but I would go to a zoo to see one. Know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So people like being on the outside and looking in. So why is that not happening in Scotland? That's what really frustrates me.
It is, and it's this attitude that it doesn't hold up, especially when you look at other countries who've got similar populations, like the Scandinavian countries. A load of their stuff, right? Very, very specific to where they stay. Except you get the bridge, you get the killing, you get a whole bunch of most of them are true crime things.
Yeah.
But they resonate internationally. I don't know if you watched, I can't remember the name of it, the Italian crime drama.
Gomorrah. I was actually thinking that there. Look at that. I've seen what people say like that. Amazing. Oh, but it's in subtitles.
Brilliant. It's one of the best crime dramas I've ever seen. It's up there with The Wire. It's amazing.
I've not seen it, but I've heard.
You've never seen The Wire?
No, I've not seen Gomorrah.
Oh, you've not seen Gomorrah?
I've seen The
Right,
Wire.
I was going to say.
Podcast is done. See you later.
Gomorrah's cracking. So the argument doesn't hold up because, these other countries can do it, so why can't we? And it's I don't know what we suffer from up here. If it's tall poppy syndrome, or if it's just a case, I call it we're a training ground for people who want to get big jobs in London, because you get a lot of executives who come up here and do 6 months, and then they'll get bumped up and then go down to London and do the real job. And we just don't give a shit about what it feels like to me. We don't give a shit about the people that live here.
I know.
And I don't know what needs to change, but something needs to change, because it's not a good environment to be in.
Yep. Because that's the thing I wonder, because there's no way somebody can tell me, people don't want to hear these stories, and as you look at your Gomorrah and all that kind of thing, things that are internationally known. Like, where's Gomorrah set? Is it like Naples?
It's Naples, aye.
So you think if somebody was this, we'll get an idea for a crime drama, it's set in Naples, somebody will be like, what? Oh, it'll be worldwide. We watch worldwide, right? But then it's not until something comes out like that. I go back to the thing in Ireland, like your kin, that everybody was watching that when it came out, and I watched it. It was really good. But you see these things as well. In theory, if you think, right, look, if I was to go like that, right, I've got an idea for this Scottish crime drama. It's about XYZ, this type of thing, real issues, but obviously dramatised. And think, nah, that's not really an audience for that. Well, why is there an audience for Irish, English, Italian, American? There's audiences for that, because see, a true crime audience, if I just use true crime in this context, a true crime audience doesn't really care where somebody, I'm not watching that. English gangsters, Irish gangsters, nah, I'm not buying it, mate. I mean, come on, nobody really cares about the accent. And what really bugs me, how many times, like, Peaky Blinders is a good example. See, it'll be in the papers, like, it's I can't remember. No, I don't know the exact title, but you probably know. See, when I think it was the Billy Boys was in Peaky Blinders. Aye. It was in the papers, and everybody's like, Scottish people on the telly, and you watch it and you're like, what was that accent all about? It's almost like you built up like, yes, we're getting represented, then the carpet is pulled from under your feet, because you're like, did you honestly get an actor? Did you just do another Mel Gibson and get an actor to pretend they were Scottish? And if you even look at Braveheart as well, and we're going back 30 years, it's like one of the biggest films ever made to represent Scottish culture was an absolute insult to Scottish history. Because it's
Stirling Bridge, way out the bridge.
I know, what's going on here? Because see, I remember in my school, I done history. Teacher was called Mr. Henry. He was a nice old guy. He would teach us like history by playing Braveheart and then stopping it and going like, oh, so by the way, this is what's happening. He would use that as like a guide, and then so you're thinking Braveheart is gospel, then it's not to your audio. Like, wait a minute, that was so historically inaccurate. It was insane.
Still a good film, right? I will defend Braveheart as a separate film that's not historically accurate. See, but it's amazing. You look at the actors in that who, like, were nobodies at the time, and then they've become these massive, like, your Brian Cox. You've got Peter Mullen was in it as well.
Aye,
it's I don't know. I just think we've got a low ambition up here.
I think it's as well, I don't think that's like see the low ambition thing. I think it's that way. You've got a strong tide to fight against up here, because it might be that tall poppy syndrome, or have you ever heard the crabs in a bucket mentality?
It's the same thing.
So that kind of thing where if I say to somebody I want to be an actor, I ain't bother, mate. It's like, see what I'm doing as well. You kind of need to put yourself out there. I was lucky enough, the first thing I done, I was like a gambler. See, when they say a gambler should never win his first bet, because if you win your first bet, then it sets a bad precedent. My first video done pretty well that I done in social media, so that made me realise, right, there's an audience for what I've got to offer. I'm not saying they're going to like everything I do, but there's something there. So I was lucky enough to get that. What I think the problem is, people only willing to fail. And it's not the thing, everybody wants to be successful, but not everybody wants to fail. And I think what kind of, I don't say separates me, but what does kind of put me into the smaller margin here is I'm willing to fail on a grander scale. I'm willing to take chances. And I remember hearing a podcast, it was Modern Wisdom, Chris Williamson. I can't remember the guy he had on. And the guy says, I always try to get 3 big failures a year. And I'll not set out to fail, but if you're not failing, you're not aiming high enough. Like some of my music, I sat and spent some considerable amount of time making an album, recorded it, wrote all the songs, produced it in my own home studio, and it was like, this is an actual body of work that actually meant something to me, and it's got so much of my creative footprint on it. And I put it out and it collapsed and fumbled. I put some of the videos out and got absolutely slated, and then at first I was like, all right, come on here, they're not that bad. But then I realised, right, I got a failure. And I wasn't aiming for a failure, but I was able to put myself out there. And I'd like to think I would probably describe myself as pretty established in social media to a certain degree. So certain people know me. Probably people maybe watch my stuff and expect a level of quality. So I'm at a stage where I can fail on a grander scale, and I can buzz after that, because suddenly any idea becomes an idea worth trying. So I think that's a point you need to come to. So see, starting off and having that thing, well, because it's great at the start. See, you're probably your most flexibility being creative at the start, because you've not really got anything behind you to base like any success off. You've never done anything. If you do something and it hits a brick wall, then it doesn't really matter, because it's the first time you've done something. So I think it's just getting started for a lot of people. But the likes I look at right now, and I don't know if this is just because I think it, or I'm in Scotland, so it must be like this. I think when you look at, right, I've got this great idea to do this like series or this short film and that, like, right, how do I get that off the ground? What funding's available to me? Like, for talk's sake, if I was to get private investors on board, how do I pay them back? They'll be wanting the return on investment. Whereas it seems to be in the likes of, I just keep using London as an example, there's a lot of opportunity to do that down there, because the creative industry is thriving. So, but I don't think that this is a permanent fixture. I think we're slowly getting out of the dark ages with it. And maybe I'm an optimist in that sense, but I think we're headed in the right direction. I just, all it takes is the right person to go, wait a minute, and see what I'm talking about in terms of looking at like your Irish dramas, your English, your Italian. Go, wait, how can we not do this here? I did hear they were talking about doing some kind of crime drama on STV, but then the plug got pulled on it for whatever reason. So it's hard to kind of try and kind of figure out what's going on in these conversations, because as you assume, you don't ever assume that there's working class people at the helm. It's usually middle class people, and what is it they call it? Nepotism is quite prominent in that kind of thing. So it's quite a complex conversation, but I think we're kind of moving in the right direction, although at a slow pace.
So how do you, just to move on from the content stuff and just general social media, again, you don't seem to let any of the mental shit that's happening in the world affect you. And I really admire that. Does it affect you, and have you got coping mechanisms for it, or do you just block everything out?
What kind of mental stuff?
Just the general news, just the general terrible things that are happening in the world. I'm under a rock most of the time, because I'm so busy. I very rarely look at the news. See, if I look at the news, I'll kind of go like, right, how can I use this? How can I use this idea to inspire some content? So see, if I'm sitting dry on content, like, what can I make a video about? Usually I'll check the news, and sometimes like maybe like a news article will pop up and a wee idea will flash into my head. And I think for me, that's probably my kind of filter in order to process it. But
I kind of tune out of the news. It is, and I think there's a lot of people like yourself. You're kind of like actively involved in that type of thing. You take a keen interest in it. And Twitter, it's very political dominated. You see a lot of people and it's taught about it. And I felt with the independence referendum, I really got into the Yes campaign and started looking into politics. And I'm not saying I was by any means like an expert in any subject, but I got to know the politics world for the first time. And I remember just being sucked into it and just being like, no, this is a bit of a drain, man. And after that, I kind of took a step back, and it was one of the things I kind of keep it at arm's length, but it doesn't really faze me, really, what's going on in the world. As I say, I'm constantly distracted. Maybe if I was sitting and I had time to ponder, maybe, but the thing is, I'm very seldom am I bored, because I've always got something to focus on. I've always got something to work on, and see if I've got nothing to work on, then I'll make something to work on. Like I'll grab my camera, go out and make a video. So the likes of that, for me, because before I used drugs as my coping mechanism, so I wasn't even aware of what was going on in the world, because I was too busy in houses for like 4 days on end for La Charlie and all that. So this is now I've turned like an addiction into a passion, where this is what gives me life, this is what gives me vitality, and I feel for whatever I plan to achieve, every wee video I do, every wee idea I take, doing everything that I action provides another stepping stone towards materialising that future for myself.
It's a really good attitude, and it's one that I wish I had, because I let it all in, as I've said before on this thing. Do you want to talk about sobriety?
Aye, I'm happy to.
You're happy to talk about sobriety? Because again, if we're talking about, because things are quite bad for a lot of people, and drugs and drink are, coping mechanisms. What made you become sober?
So, it was a long time coming, to be honest. As I say, I got really bad with the Charlie. I was like an everyday user. I was like $5,000 in debt to various drug dealers. I tried selling it, and that's where my debts kind of accumulated. And I just I hit rock bottom more than once. I just became a shadow of myself, just somebody that I didn't recognise. And I didn't really recognise myself for all my life, because I spent so much time, for the majority of my life, just trying to please other people, because I didn't really know who I was as a person. I was always trying to be somebody that other people would accept. Acceptance was like a big problem in my life, because I always wanted to be accepted, always wanted to be liked, so my behaviour reflected that. So I got to a stage where the drinking, the drugs absolutely just ruined us to a point, and then I managed to regain a bit of stability in life. I basically swapped one drug for another. I stopped sniffing gear and started smoking weed, although I wouldn't recommend doing either. It helped kind of bring me back out of that, where I was able to get doing a full-time job. I could start paying off my debts and kind of start making my amends to people that I'd hurt, but I was still mentally done in. Like, my head was all over the place. And it wasn't as if I'd stopped drinking or that. I'd have a period where I'd be smoking weed, copious amounts of weed, and then I'd try to come off that, then I'd end up on a bender, then I'd end up back on the weed. It was just a cycle like that, and I was just mentally defeated with it, and I just felt that sense of uselessness. And I remember the kind of tipping point was I'd been seeing a lassie, and I was out one night, ended up mad with it for like a year, and went with somebody behind her back. So I woke up the next day and I felt terrible, so I just told her. And that finished that, and I kind of realised I had a wake-up call where I thought, right, I would never have done that sober. I knew it, because I always looked at people who'd done that stuff, like I would never do that. And then suddenly I just thought, well, if I can do that mad with it, what else can I do? Put the fear in this. So that kind of pushed me into recovery. And don't get me wrong, it was a bit of a rocky start, but this is the thing, how a lot of stuff ties in. So when I went into recovery, what they say is you get yourself a sponsor, so you do a 12-step programme, so you need a sponsor to take you through that 12-step programme. I was at an acting workshop months before, and I met the guy that went on to become my sponsor. He was acting in the same thing I was acting in. I didn't even know he was in recovery, and I didn't even have the conversation with him. I think I was talking on my podcast about I need to get a sponsor to get off it, and somebody messaged me like, why don't you ask him? You know him, you're pal of him. And I was like, light bulb moment, you know what I'm talking about? And I asked him, he says, I'll take you through it. I'm still pals with him today, really close pals with him. And I went through the process. And I used to think I had a drug and alcohol problem, but I didn't. I had a me problem. Drugs and alcohol was just a symptom of it. Because when you go into recovery, you think it's just about getting off it and staying off it. And that's the simple part. Because once you get through that, then it's like, right, what's leading you back to using drugs and alcohol? And it's all this stuff you've buried there the years. is essentially try to develop a new way of thinking. I kind of struggled with that process. I fought against it. And I remember, so the 12-step program is taught through a book. So it's a book they kind of go through. It's like a textbook, essentially. And I remember looking at it, and you go into like, any rooms of recovery, people talk about a 12-step program and the big book they call it. And I was looking at this book like, how is that going to help me? How is a book going to help me? And I remember thinking, you know what? I'll try it. I'll get to the end, and if there's a lot of mints, I can say that at least I've tried it. And I went through the process, and it was difficult. It was challenging, but I was able to kind of unearth a lot of stuff I'd buried early years and just my perspective in life and that. And it was absolutely life-changing. See, when you talk about not letting the outside world affect me, that's a big contributor to it, because I was under the impression you would work through the big book and that was you done. The small print is, the 12-step is about working with others, so you need to you become a sponsor to other people. And I get to do that today. I didn't do it right away. I was pretty selfish with it, and I had a lot to learn, because it's a process, and they say it's progress over perfection. And I had time to kind of dwell, and I really half-arsed recovery for the first 2 years. I'm 2.5 years clean. 2 years clean, 2.5 years after the booze and the gear, so 2 years clean. And I half-arsed it for a large part of it. And I really only started applying myself like kind of the tail end of last year. And since I started applying myself is where I've saw the real rewards for myself and actually saw what it's got to offer. So now, that's why on my podcast as such, I'll talk about my experiences and what I've done. There's only really so much. I can only talk about my experiences because it is anonymous, so I can't really talk about anybody else, but I can talk about me. And I've had people reach out to me, and I've directed them into meetings, offered to take them to meetings as such, and I'm realising, man, it's like, it goes back to that thing at the start, it was about views, getting people to watch me, but now, I was talking to my pal about it, he does like the social media type things like that. You sit and do a video and sometimes you only get like 200 views and all that, and I'm like, aye, but you think, what would you rather, 100,000 views for a video that meant nothing, or 200 views but you've changed somebody's life? And you think, what's the price in comparison to changing a life? And sometimes people need that, and it's that honesty. And at the start, it wasn't about being honest to help other people. I was being honest about my background and my jail experiences such, because I forecast if I end up in the public sphere, which I'm kind of operating in now, I'm going to be under scrutiny, as if, because that's going to come out eventually. So the way I was like, I'll just own it early on. But now it's become a lot, people have been able to relate to it, and it's shown a certain level of authenticity, and that's what's allowing people to connect with. I never intended it to start with, but now, as times went on, it suddenly makes sense. And you have these wee moments where you just kind of, it's like an epiphany. They call it spiritual experiences in recovery. So there's moments where it just suddenly clicks. And I've been of that belief for a while. I used to be this pure victim mentality, like, why me? Why has this happened to me? Suddenly, I look back at everything that's happened, what I've done and what other people have done, and it makes sense. And it's empowering my situation today. So see, like, I'm dealing with some personal circumstances and now, I've got a confidence now that I can deal with it and it comes my way. That will be difficult at times, but it's given me a lot. And it's honestly, God, it's like, talk about recovery. If people think it's about drinking drugs, that's the first part of it. Once that's out the way, it's the rest, and there's a lot of magic here.
It's really interesting because I've spoken to a few people who are in recovery like yourselves, like you're more than one person there, like yourself, and in our society in particular, even though Scotland does have, we've got a massive drinking drug problem, there's also that attitude that's pretty derogatory towards people who are going through that, and it's not the best atmosphere in certain circumstances, certain circles. But everybody I've spoke to in recovery has, I don't know if you'd call it a spark, but they have that snap, that click like you've got just now, where you're looking kind of beyond yourself, and you are stripping away all a lot of the stuff that normal people are carrying with them, sort of fucking narcissism and fucking all the rest of it. And I just think that's a strange sort of inversion, because there's a lot of good that I'm seeing happens to people who go through that, and I know it's coming from bad things, but at the end of it, there's a lot of people who are really, really improving themselves. And I think it's just a strange thing that we're living in, where that's still sort of looked down upon, if you know what I mean.
It's strange. It is stigmatised. It's taking drugs isn't stigmatised, but being an addict is. But the thing is, you ask yourself, right, who chooses to become an addict? Nobody, because if you look at somebody, look, you go out in the street and you see somebody sitting in the street with a crumpled up Greg's cup begging for money. Do you think they're there because they want to be there? But until you've really experienced it, it's hard to understand it. I had that view on people like that. I used certain derogatory terms to describe people when I was younger. And even when I found myself in addiction, like, I probably did separate myself from other people because of the colour of the drug. And then I realised, wait a minute, and this is what recovery is about, is realising it's not about the drug, it's the behaviours. They tell you not to separate yourself, to identify. A guy might be doing a share and he's talking about how he was a heroin addict for age of 13 or something. And I'll be like, I never took heroin and I didn't take drugs for age of 13. But that's not what you're looking for. You're looking at the behaviours. What did they do? Did they felt isolated, or they didn't feel as if they fitted into life? What contributed to them using drugs? How could they not get off it? That's the kind of stuff you're looking for. But I think unless somebody has had a direct interaction with addiction, whether it's personally or if it's a family member, then you're not really going to get any sympathy towards it, because most people's experience of addiction is walking by somebody in the street and they'll maybe say, well, you'll get some people that are compassionate, but for the large part, people aren't really. But it's trying to understand what leads people into it. But the thing is, like your Cocaine Anonymous, your Narcotics Anonymous, your Alcoholics Anonymous, they are anonymous and they act on attraction rather than promotion, so they don't really work with anybody. It's not as if you can go, I'm sponsored by AA. It doesn't really work like that. It's like people are kind of attracted towards it. So if you're going into like an AA meeting or a CA meeting, it's because you're rock bottom. I remember actually sitting thinking, I was like a Tuesday night and I'd been sniffing, and I remember like, this needs to stop, and I went on and looked for CA meetings, and I was like, is that where I'm at right now? I was probably the worst I'd ever been, but going to a CA meeting suddenly made it real, and it provided a wake-up call as such. But see, I'm doing a documentary about addiction right now, and I've spoke to some people who've lost sons for using drugs that have been addicts, and most people's encounters, as I say, you walk by an addict in the street, but see when you actually meet their family, it's dealing with the fallout, because you hear like, they talk about drug death statistics since like the 1300s. You just see that as a number. Aye. But when you meet one family off the back of it and you just see like 5 years later, they're still picking up the pieces because it's still their baby, their child. It really kind of hits home, like, my God, man, there's like a serious problem here. But as you say, it's like, it goes back to that thing where the people that are in charge of making decisions to make a difference in the government sphere is like, it's a class thing, I think.
There's too much of a disconnect between
definitely
experiences.
Nah, no relatability.
And so even with the best of intentions, unless you're speaking to people who are actually experiencing that thing, you're going to make these choices and decisions which are only in the best interests of the people who need the help the most.
Mm-hmm. And it's the government approach to it as well. Like, harm reduction's massive in Scotland. You look at methadone. Like, methadone's used as a substitute for heroin. And yeah, it does. It's supposed to. The idea it was brought in during the heroin epidemic in like the 80s and the 90s, and the idea was to provide somebody with a sense of stability. It would take away their craving for heroin, so it meant they could get a more stable life. See, the majority of like what they call it polydrug use, when people use multiple drugs at once. See, the majority of deaths in Scotland, it's through polydrug use. A lot of them are taking methadone. So like, you're substituting one drug for another, but that's not keeping you abstinent for all other drugs. And you've got these safe consumption rooms. It's up in the barras, and it's providing an opportunity to like minimise risks from maybe like needles getting found in the street, and I don't know, people using dirty equipment as such. It is, but it's not really tackling the root issue. So think of all the money it's getting into this harm reduction, and you think of that, it's like, well, we're not trying to stop you from taking drugs, but we're just making sure you're out the road. Yeah, like you can go into like, but most people like, if they score whatever they're scoring at the other end of Glasgow, they're not travelling in to get a hit. They're like, I'm taking it right now because I need it. So it's a bit of a fight, and unless you're, I wouldn't say on the front line, but unless you've seen it up close, I know people who work with certain charities that are dealing with it. They work closely with the government, and there's a lot of, it's like a tug of war at times because you're trying to get these people to understand, but as well, it goes back to votes. A vote winner. It's like, having a politician to go into like, your parliament and talk about addiction and say, right, we want to kind of fund these services as such, people are like, right, no, why are you funding that? It's like the prison system. It's like, no, we want to talk about like your rap workshops as such. If it's no going towards, right, punishment, or if it's no going towards this type of thing, then why are you funding it? Because people don't realise like you need to kind of be a bit revolutionary in your approach in order to solve certain issues, but people want to keep doing the same stuff here and there again and expect different results.
Definition of madness, innit?
No, that's exactly it, mate. We live in a mad time.
Don't get me started. But speaking of mad times, just quickly at the end, you did go on an ayahuasca trip. What led you to that? Because a lot of people say DMT and ayahuasca is what everybody needs to, free your consciousness. So what was your experience of it?
So with ayahuasca, I always wanted to do ayahuasca and I always wanted to do a documentary alongside it. And I remember I met a lassie, Chloe Ferns, ended up quite pal away. And it was she'd asked me to come and do like this kind of Davy Goggins type hill kind of run thing. It was like a mad heavy endurance test. And I can't remember, in communication with her, ayahuasca came up in the subject. She'd done it before. I can't remember if it was me that mentioned it or her that mentioned it. Sorry. I can't remember who'd mentioned it at first, but before I knew it, a retreat was booked. Well, it was scheduled and it was set in place. Then, so it was like £1,000 or something to pay for the retreat. This was when I first went self-employed, so I was like, right, I need to get the money to pay for this. So within the first month, I'd made about $4,000 doing the production stuff, but I also put out like basically a sponsorship type thing. If you want to sponsor this trip, I'm doing a documentary. You can get your business featured in the documentary. A guy who's from Paisley originally but stays in Australia messaged me. He's like, I'll sponsor your documentary, what you're looking for. And I just wanted enough to cover the trip. He's like, I'll pay it. Sent me the money. So I was like, right, this has been so easy. I've had harder nights out trying to get planned than this. This is just what so I'm kind of, if something's flowing in a certain direction, I follow the current, right? So we went there. You had to do like the kind of diet thing and all that kind of. I did. You need to come off coffee and all that. I think I managed that. You're meant to do it a week before it. The day I flew there, as well as the day I didn't drink coffee. So I went there, and you go in with your intentions. What do you want to get out of it? And I was just wanting to see, right, am I headed in the right direction? What is the future going to store for me? It was just trying to settle a lot of doubts. And I went in and there was like a group of us, and we went in and I was absolutely bricking it, man, because I was just paranoid. I was like, because I hadn't used like drugs or anything in such a long time. And whilst ayahuasca is very different, you're not taking ayahuasca to get it done. Aye. Right? But I was like, it was just the thought of being away with it. So I'd done DMT and that before, but just because you hear people talking about it, but it's hard for the human brain to fathom what it's like. So I remember I'd done it the first night. I just launched myself into it. Went up the gear. It was called Rappy, so they blow tobacco up your nose and that's meant to help you prepare for it. And they give you the drink, and I was like, I volunteered first. I was like, I'm getting immersed in this, and we done it. It tasted like buckfast soup. That's what it tastes like. It was like pure this mad liquid, man. So, but I drank it because I hear it's this foul tasting liquid. But see the people that are talking about that, it's like Americans, English people, Scottish people, easy cakewalk. So done it, and you do a thing what's called a purge, which basically it clears out your body. It's like you're waiting for the bottom of your bowels. And I remember purging. You would get periods. You would purge it first, and then that's when you would enter into it. And I remember I've done DMT multiple times, and every time I've done DMT, I felt I was going back to the same place. Right. That's how it feels, right? When I done ayahuasca, when it started kicking in, I was like, I'm back. It was like entering the Matrix. That's what it feels like. You're like, right, I'm back here. So it's like being in a spiritual roller coaster, but it was just a mad experience, because I thought it was going to be like this kind of old retro film playing back all my life's traumas and that. I'm like, what am I going to see? Has somebody done something to me? I don't remember. Thankfully that never happened, but it was a bit different. It was merely like a learning. And somebody says to me, ayahuasca, it's like 1,000 hours of hypnotherapy rolled into one. So it just feels like you're getting all this information and you're just stripping away all this stuff. And I remember I seen myself in probably like my 50s. I seen it, and I looked at my dad. He's got long hair, and I had like longer hair and all that kind of thing. And I seen myself as a filmmaker, and it was weird. It's like you see it, but you understand it. It's strange. So see, if I saw an image of myself, I understood what I was. Does that make sense? So I had that, and then I had the time of my life, if I'm being honest. There was people around me absolutely hating it, because there was some people around me that had never took a drug in their life, and I was like, what, people were heavy struggling, and I was riding the roller coaster. I was loving it. There was times it was testing. One thing, see, when I was purging, I would get up and your kind of body does its own thing. You just need to let it roll, so your body will maybe kind of convulse and stuff like that. What mine's kept doing, like, I was just letting my body roll it. I kept purging, like, waiting. But then I was like drinking water, going, as if I was just mouthwash to clear my mouth out, and I was getting like tissue and like wiping my face, and I was purging, and the message I got for that is just don't talk shit. That's not, I mean, it's like that's what it was. It's as if I was cleaning my mouth out all the crap I'd spoke in my life. Right. That's what I took for that. And it's hard to kind of try and explain it back, because you kind of understand it there in the moment. I done 2 nights yet. The third night I hit the rappy and I put a pure badge in. I had a heavy nicky buzz, whited, never done it. So the thing about ayahuasca is people think, and I thought you go and did ayahuasca, 2 seconds, my foot's away. People thought you did ayahuasca, I thought, and then it suddenly just changed your life instantly, and right. You came out this yogi. It doesn't work like that. What happens is you come out of it, and then life suddenly kind of, it's like, see, I use the analogy, seeing you're doing your driving lessons. You do your driving lessons and then you do a test. You don't do your driving lessons, you only need a licence. So I saw ayahuasca as like a lesson and all these things I had to incorporate into my life to change. Then when I get back, suddenly I got all these mad weird challenges in life flung at me, like relationships, whatever. Stuff really stressed me out. And I remember sitting saying in my head, ayahuasca, like, back here, what have I learned for this? And it was just, I get this thought, like, right, this is how I need to approach this. I done that back in May last year. A totally different person since then. Uh-huh. And for the better. There's sometimes I look back and I'm like, oh, wow, I've still got a long way to go, but thing is, recovery has helped supplement it. And see, when I came back, I realised the power I had in the sense of how I could help people. I wasn't sponsoring people, I wasn't doing any of the work. When I came back, that's when I really started applying myself to recovery. Would I do it again? Probably not. Because people go, you're not for nothing. I'm like, I wouldn't do it again. I've got no reason to. I've got nothing else to gain for it. And that's what people say to me, you're in recovery, how'd you do ayahuasca? Like, you're not doing ayahuasca and like, geez, another one. You're doing one, you're like, keep that away. It's heavy duty. I would recommend it, but I would also say to anybody that's going to do it, make sure the people you're doing it with are legit, because you're putting a lot of trust in people's hands. You're vulnerable when you're under it. I remember getting a vibe, because they all wear these mad gowns and all that. And I remember during my trip, I looked up and it was like, they were like Native American Indians. That's kind of like the vibe I got. It's crazy, and they sing mad. Seen the second night, I went up to get a cup, and the guy sat, he poured it, and he went like, and he sang into it for a minute, right? So a minute doesn't seem long. See, when you're waiting on a drink, if I poured you a drink and you wait, a minute is a long time to get that. Whilst this guy's singing, I'm like, and he gave me it and I tanked it. And I seen him later on, I was like, mate, what was that all about? And he's like, that cup was enchanted. So I was like, what does that mean? He's like, it's got to be stronger. So he's like, you're standing up and now you'll be lying down 20 minutes. 20 minutes, I was away with the fairies. But he's like, you'll take a lot of learning for this, because they can tell, they drink ayahuasca, the shamans. So they know who's struggling, they know who to help. So he's like, I knew you needed it. So, and I'm like, wow, and it suddenly just opens your mind up to like the possibilities of the world. And it sounds airy-fairy, but until you do it, and you get a thing what's called the calling. So see, as I say, I knew I got the calling because it literally formed itself. I put the least amount of effort into making that happen. But what it done was, during that experience, I realised, right, I'm this kind of guy that can do all these different things because I'm just, I don't know what they call it, neurodivergent they call it these days, but it suddenly just gave me a lot of clarity. And see, there's times when it does get difficult, I might, because it gets challenging. Sometimes you're doubtful. Am I doing the right thing? I always think back to that and go, aye, I'm doing it. So it's done that for me.
Sounds good. Sounds something I don't want to do.
It's mental.
Right, I think we'll wrap up there. Thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Even though you're a wee bit under the weather, appreciate you coming in.
No, thanks for having us. It was good. It was a good chat. Enjoyed it.
Right, that is episode 6 of the Tickling the Void podcast with me, Shawnee Boy. Go on the Patreon if you're not. Patreon.com/Tickling the Void. And, you know, we are accepting sponsors, you know, and puka pads, man. You've no picked up, right? We love a puka pads, and I've still no heard hide nor hair of anybody from puka pads. I'm not saying this needs to be a Luigi situation, but we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Yo, I'm in the light at the end of the tunnel. Paper stacks, yeah, I got them in the bundles. Harry Potter breaking bread with the muggles. They said I wouldn't make it, now they looking puzzled. They said I wouldn't take it,